I think it's unlikely. I feel like we're all just kind of being lied to about Epstein. I don't even really believe that Epstein's dead. So first and foremost, you're not going to believe me, but I got another legal letter. I did because that's my life. I don't even have to advertise it anymore. But this legal letter was a little bit odd because it was pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein. And that man is dead as a doornail. How do we know that he's dead as a doornail? Well, because we got those two photos of him suspiciously. Those two photos of the New York Post's contracted photographer happened to be there, got the call, William Farrington. We did a whole episode on that. Very strange set of circumstances surrounding the morning that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, right? Honestly, the entire week was very strange. The New York Post had the greatest week ever, really. Not only was William Farrington right place, right time, right angle of this photo of Jeffrey Epstein. See the proof? We've got the exclusive, said John Levine of the New York Post. They had the exclusive of him being carted in there.
I've never followed Candace super closely, so I don't have strong feelings about her one way or the other. Over the years, I've noticed her making good points from her time at Turning Point USA, or at least when she would go do events with them. More recently, relatively recently at least, her firing from the Daily Wire and now the whole story and stuff, these claims she's making about Brigitte Macron. I find the Macron story intriguing in general, and honestly, I believe it, at least given in today's world. It doesn't seem that far-fetched. My point is, I've just never taken a deep dive into her or her work. So basically, she's saying right now is that William Farrington, who is a freelance photographer for the New York Post, he took the infamous photo of Jeffrey Epstein's body being wheeled out of the prison or correctional center that he was being held in 2019. Candace finds it suspicious that Farrington was there at the perfect moment. She's hinting that he probably has insider knowledge or there was some kind of inside coordination going on there. That's how he found himself there at this perfect time. I attempted to dig into Farrington's background, but found almost nothing. No history, no photos. Searching X and YouTube yields nothing except other posts and a few threads about him, but absolutely no pictures on either platform. I was able to find an audio recording from a journalist who contacted Farrington a few days after Jeffrey Epstein's alleged suicide, around the same time those photos were taken of him, obviously, the ones that Farrington took. I'm going to play the audio for you now.
Hello?
Hi, is this Bill Farrington?
Who's calling?
My name's Robbie Walters. I'm a freelance writer from upstate New York.
What's going on?
I wanted to see if you had like a minute or so to talk about that Epstein photo you took on Saturday.
I don't really care to talk about it.
Well, it's like a worldwide photo now. It's like probably the photo of the year. I just was,
I don't think so. I think that's not like that. Thanks, Robbie. I appreciate your time.
Okay. All right, bye.
Okay. I'm no expert on journalistic etiquette, but the photographer's behavior seems strange. He takes what's now a world famous photo, refuses to discuss it with anyone. It's just odd, and I can't help but wonder if he's avoiding questions about how he got the shot, specifically how he knew to be there at the perfect moment. Given that this involves an alleged suicide, it raises questions about whether he was tipped off, implying either someone knew Epstein would kill himself or that the event itself was staged to look like a suicide. I totally understand, too, that we are venturing into serious conspiratorial territory, but these are reasonable questions with no clear answers. At least from what's available, I can't even find a single picture of the guy. He's a complete mystery. But let's keep watching.
Well, it turns out that he copywrote those photos. So you are actually not allowed to share those photos, even though it was like the most shared photograph in the world, because it was maybe the biggest story of 2019. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Well, he since has copywritten those photos. And we were actually glad about that because I'm happy to take down those social media posts, William Farrington. But it also allowed us to learn where William Farrington lived. You know, we're not here to dox him, but we were able to place him in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and able to really estimate how utterly implausible it is that he would have gotten from Flatbush, Brooklyn, all the way to New York Presbyterian Hospital in that timeline. I mean, someone would have had to call him at the prison, really, that morning and been like, hey, Jeffrey Epstein just killed himself really quick. He's coming in through this door. Get here as fast as possible. I think it's unlikely. I feel like we're all just kind of being lied to about Epstein. I don't even really believe that Epstein's dead. We're not getting any answers, right? We're not getting any answers about that orange blob, the mysterious orange blob, or the missing 3 minutes of footage. And like I said, a few days later, the New York Post then gets caught in a totally fraudulent photo scandal. So it doesn't help.
All right. That is quite a bit to unpack in such a short span of time or video. Candace says we're being misled about the Epstein files and that she doesn't even believe he's dead, and it seems unlikely we'll get any real answers. I mean, holy smokes. Those are some wild statements. Candace said she believes we're being lied to and that Epstein may not even be dead. Real quick, with that being said, I'm going to play a clip from a press conference just yesterday of Trump addressing the Epstein case. Let's see what he says.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit.
Stop the cap.
So that clip speaks for itself. Back to what Candace was saying, she also brings up the mysterious orange blob, which is a reference to the missing 3 minutes of footage in the recently released prison footage of Epstein's last moments, or the video that's like right outside of his cell. There's a camera that was pointed directly at his cell door, and then when they released that footage, there was right around 3 minutes missing from it. So there basically isn't too much to add in on that because it's pretty self-explanatory. The footage was released about a month ago and it was altered, leaving 3 minutes missing. I've done some digging. I think I may have found the missing footage. Here's what I found. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Okay, guys. Clearly, I was just playing around. That is not the missing footage. Just wanted to spice it up a little bit, have some fun. So, but anyways, let's get back to the video.
Right? Because the story gets even stranger beyond that. Just to recap your memory here, Ghislaine Maxwell gets arrested almost a year later to the date that Jeffrey Epstein got arrested. She got arrested on July 2nd, 2020. And then as people are discussing her and wondering what her case is going to look like, you know, Jeffrey Epstein's dead. Well, somebody's got to pay for this. People put a lot of pressure. We want to make sure somebody pays for it. It seems like Jeffrey Epstein got away with it somehow. And sure enough, it seemed that our Department of Justice delivered on that when it was determined on June 28, 2022, that Maxwell would spend the next 20 years of her life in prison. And we got to hear from Ghislaine Maxwell in 2020. Do you guys remember this? She gave a world exclusive interview. And in that interview, the tone of it was sort of, you should be feeling bad for Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Jeffrey Epstein's dead. Ghislaine Maxwell's rotting in prison. And really, what did Ghislaine Maxwell do wrong? Shouldn't we, are we just kind of picking on Ghislaine Maxwell here? And also, they made it clear that she was living in terrible circumstances in prison, just terrible for a woman that had dined and Robert Maxwell's daughter. And now she's really roughing it out in the prison house. Take a listen to just a clip from that interview.
What do you think you made any mistake or just it's just a very bad luck? If you look back, where do you think you should have done something different?
Meeting Epstein was the greatest mistake of my life, and obviously if I could go back today, I would avoid meeting him. And I would say that would be the greatest mistake I've ever made, and I would make different choices where I would work. Obviously.
Do you consider yourself a victim of Epstein?
I don't particularly like the word victim. I think it's one that should be used very sparingly because, you know, today everybody is a victim of something, a victim of the pandemic, a victim of, you know, inflation. I've heard the word victim used about things that I don't like that word.
You reflect on that, and given everything that we've already learned just getting into this Epstein story, and you realize that that interview was meant to sanitize Ghislaine Maxwell. Like I said, to present her, she's not going to call herself a victim, but don't you guys kind of feel bad? Epstein's gone and she's in prison and she's rotting away. And what did she actually do? And she regrets having ever met him. But reflecting on it, they kind of lied about how she met him.
Yeah, so it's interesting what she's saying right now. I personally, 3 or 4 months ago, 6 months ago, I would have never subscribed to what she's saying. I would have never believed that based off that audio clip that they're basically setting the stage, that they're fluffing up Ghislaine Maxwell's character. Ultimately, what she's getting at is they're setting the stage to possibly give her a pardon or get her released or something reduced. They've already moved her to this minimal security prison. So it's very interesting. And again, I wouldn't have thought this a few months ago, but you look what's happening with P. Diddy. He's had all his major charges released or dropped, and people are saying that Trump may even pardon him. And if he does, that would be wild. And also, guys, I am putting some digital images into the video just to add a little bit of context. One's from ABC News, where it's just showing you that P. Diddy did get a lot of his charges dropped. I am also going to play a video of Greg Kelly, who is a Newsmax host. And for people who don't know, Newsmax is basically a mainstream, quote unquote, right wing news source. So here's the clip.
Pled guilty to that horrible, sick stuff. But that doesn't mean that Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty. And there is a hell of a lot of evidence out there that she's innocent, and a hell of a lot of evidence that they railroaded her. Part of a deep state media hysterical plot. And I don't like it. And I don't care if it's unpopular. In fact, I'm kind of really impressed with President Trump right now that he won't be boxed in when it comes to this story.
Okay. A second ago, I just said, quote unquote, right wing. What I meant to say is, quote unquote, far right wing, because this is what the right or the mainstream far right has kind of become. These people are carrying water. They're towing the line for child traffickers and pedophiles, and they really want to see her released, which is wild. I mean, I think that they probably would like to see her eliminated, taken out of the equation, so to speak. So it's all just very interesting. I'm going to throw another snippet to show you. There's a guy on Twitter that goes by Gunther Eagleman. He's got a ton of followers and stuff like this, but he's also made tweets recently indicating that Ghislaine Maxwell needs to be given a platform or a place, a microphone to speak and tell her side of the story, which I just find is interesting. I guess they don't believe she's guilty. So anyways, we'll roll on, keep going.
Instantly weird. It's weird that he's tweeting all the time about like anti-Semitism. Like, we sent you in to like clean up vaccines, not to tell us that like the new virus going around is anti-Semitism. All that's weird. And it feels like he's being controlled. But this person, who I would say would know, was saying that Daphne Barak is kind of the person to look at. And I said to myself, I remember meeting this woman. I know this woman. That's what I said back. I know this woman. And I went through my phone. I was like, I've had text messages with this woman. I remember her as being sort of an eccentric journalist. You're telling me that she's hanging around with RFK Jr. and like, what are we getting at here? And so I then tried to look up, because at the time, like I said, I just knew her. I actually think I met her a few times at Mar-a-Lago during Trump's first administration. Again, I know her as just a journalist. I looked up what Daphne Barak has contributed. She spent 6 months with Amy Winehouse and her family. She wrote a book about Amy Winehouse, kind of had exclusive access to her and her family. Okay, that's interesting. I assume someone that's written books as she has written would have a Wikipedia. Well, she might actually be the first person ever, and I'm guessing here, I've never heard of it, who got her entire Wikipedia page wiped. Like, they said that the reason that they wiped this page was that there just wasn't enough primary sources. So then I asked the person, I'm like, the last name Barak, is there any chance that she is related to Ehud Barak, as in like the former prime minister of Israel? Because that would be, no, come on, that can't be it. Sure enough, he's able to pull up an old, the internet just archived this, which shows that, yeah, Daphne Barak is related, they say, as a cousin of Ehud Barak. Can't tell you who her parents are, but I can tell you that she's related to Ehud Barak. That's a fact. Okay, that is kind of interesting, as we get into this Epstein story, especially because Ehud Barak is the person that was caught multiple times, former Prime Minister of Israel, going in and out of Jeffrey Epstein's home.
Okay, I think it's safe to say this video will probably not get much traction, but I'm already too invested, so it is what it is. But we have Daphne Barak, who is the cousin of the former Prime Minister of Israel, giving softball interviews to Ghislaine Maxwell while she's in prison, in which we can barely find any information on. Her Wikipedia page has been wiped. There's William, and also to go back a little bit, there's William Farrington, a freelance photographer for the New York Post, who took those infamous photos of Jeffrey Epstein when he was being wheeled out. We talked about this earlier, but we can't even find a picture of this guy. So strange. Not only that, but Ehud Barak himself is documented meeting with Epstein regularly. And I've looked into this, or I've read some stuff about it before. I think it was documented that this was happening on a monthly basis, that he would fly into the US, go visit Epstein. A lot of people say that it was a Mossad briefing. And now his cousin Daphne Barak has been identified as the journalist who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell, which obviously we established that. I'm just pointing it out. So yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff going on.
Right. Check out this article. This is from the Times of Israel. I'm going to read it directly. I'm going to quote this. It says, quote, former Prime Minister Ehud Barak met with the late disgraced financier and child sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times, beginning in 2013, according to a new report on Wednesday by the Wall Street Journal. Barak was among the list of Jewish names, including pioneering linguist and left-wing activist Noam Chomsky, longtime Bard College president Leon Botstein, and filmmaker Woody Allen, listed in a newly uncovered private calendar for Epstein. The Wall Street Journal reported in the first part of its investigative series on the hugely influential Jewish donor who used his largesse to obscure what investigators, according to the Wall Street Journal's Wednesday report on the calendar's contents, Barak visited Epstein about 30 times between 2013 and 2017 at his estates in Florida and New York, including a time in 2014 when the former Israeli premier flew with Epstein on his private aircraft from Palm Beach to Tampa, after which Epstein went on to New York. Barak said his wife and an Israeli security guard were also on that flight. He said he flew with Epstein on his private planes on one other occasion, also with his wife and guards. According to the report, Barak also met with Epstein monthly for nearly a year, beginning in December of 2015. Okay. Let's not be conspiracy theorists. We don't need to be conspiracy theorists at all.
Okay, guys, let's not be conspiracy theorists. Let's try to be rational. So this is documented. Barak frequently visited with Epstein at his New York and Florida homes. He flew on Epstein's private plane multiple times. Make of that what you will. So Candace pointed out that Barak was on a list, and she also said that Woody Allen was named on this same list of influential donors. Well, Woody Allen, who was actually born Alan Stewart Konigsberg, imagine that, has a controversial past to say the least. He had two adopted daughters, Dylan Farrow, in which she accused him of molesting her at age 7, while he later married his other adopted daughter, Soon Yi Previn, after she reached legal age. And pay attention in the video. I'm going to be dropping some more images in there to add more context. And despite all this, Hollywood never shunned Allen, never ostracized him. He's won numerous awards since then. And Mia Farrow, which was his wife when they had these adopted children, his former wife now, is actually recorded in a 1992 phone call with Woody Allen about the abuse of their adopted daughter, Dylan. This was actually also featured in an HBO docuseries, Allen versus Farrow. I'm going to play that recording, or a clip from that recording, for you guys right now.
One of you said you will not let me get it. You have to. It's way beyond that now. What you've done to Suni, what you've done to Dylan, what you've done to Dylan. Dylan's a baby. How could you do that to her? I don't know anything of the kind. I know what Dylan tells me. You've told me nothing but lies. Dylan tells the truth and consistently. No, I don't know that, Woody. I've always been worried about you and Dylan. And I didn't know the doctor had to report this to the authorities. I didn't know that. I went just to be sure she was all right. And she's not all right, Woody. She walks around the house holding her. She sleeps with me. She's scared of you. And you hurt her. And I feel pretty guilty myself that I wasn't there to protect her.
All right, we're going to move on. I just wanted to mention that I wasn't trying to make this all about Woody Allen, but she did point out that he's one of the largest donors mentioned in that list. And I was already aware of Woody's checkered past, or whatever you want to call it, his perversions, so to speak. So I found it super interesting that these are the kinds of people hanging around Epstein, the former prime minister of Israel, and even previous U.S. President Bill Clinton. And these are all people who are constantly donating to Israel, not Bill Clinton, but people like Woody Allen are. They're huge donors, and the previous prime minister of Israel. It's just interesting. I think it's important to highlight these types of things.
What I do, maybe I've trafficked a few people that are underage. He did that back in 2007. So what would be the reason that if you're a politician and you're running, don't you especially want to keep your hands clean, right? You're supposed to be like, I'm definitely not going to be caught in pictures. I'm definitely not going to be meeting with somebody who's convicted and who's a pedophile. Like, that would be crazy. But Ehud Barak did that. Monthly, by the way, in 2015. What are these meetings about? Are you not busy? Are you not busy? Don't you have to go, I don't know, do important political things in Israel? What are you doing here meeting with this guy? What do you, I would suggest, and hey, look, I'm going to check the chat because like I said, we don't need to be conspiracy theorists here, but I would imagine, given everything that we know about Jeffrey Epstein, that it would be reasonable to assume that these might have been intelligence briefings because he was controlling a blackmail ring, clearly, and that might be pretty useful if you're a politician. I'm guessing here, I'm surmising. And yet, by the way, we just telling you guys that today, and yet Pam Bondi, our Attorney General of the United States, says that she can find no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein may have been working on behalf of another state. Not even the photos of the former Prime Minister of Israel going in and out.
Yeah. Freaking interesting stuff, guys. So we're just the stuff we're looking at now, that we have access to, that's in the public domain, that even people like Pam Bondi say, I guess, they haven't seen or they have no knowledge of, because according to them, according to her, Epstein wasn't an asset of anyone. And even people like Dan Bongino, I think he's even alluded to the fact that it was a Middle Eastern country that was not Israel that was involved in this blackmail, child trafficking operation thing. So I'm going to go forward to another part of the video. We've covered just about all the Epstein stuff she talks about. So yeah, let's push forward.
Guys, going back into Macron land, it's just been crazy to see people, I feel, that have been so disingenuous covering this story, because we now recognize this story is about something so much bigger, right? So much bigger. We know what is happening in this world, okay? That we have these perverts that not just have power, but they all cover each other. I was on Alex Jones this morning, and I was just venting my frustration. The more that I think about it, the more absurd it is. Now, the Trump administration, who purports to care about free speech, that was what they ran on. Of course, they're not doing any of that stuff anymore. They're creating DEI for Israel.
Make sure you guys are watching or visually following along if you can, because I'm constantly providing documents and images to back up everything I'm saying. Also, just a heads up, I'm about to go on a little rant, so buckle up. What Candace just said, and what she really means when she talks about the Trump administration creating DEI for Israel, is that Trump is rolling out policies that mirror DEI initiatives, but they're specifically designed to prioritize and benefit Israel and Jewish communities. This includes things like beefed up protections or greater influence in key policy decisions. A prime example of that enhanced protection and influence from the Trump administration is the reversal of Biden era sanctions on Israeli citizens, especially those aimed at Jewish settlers in Judea and Samaria. Basically, the Trump team lifted the sanctions that Biden had slapped on Israeli settlers in the West Bank who were accused of violence against Palestinians. And let's not ignore the hypocrisy here. Trump has rallied against the evils of censorship, but now he's expanding hate speech codes to outright ban common criticism of Israel. In essence, Trump has vowed to dismantle DEI entirely, yet he's forcing universities to set up brand new DEI style programs just for Jewish students.
And I'll end all of the Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion policies across the entire federal government immediately.
Take Brown's and Columbia's settlements with the Trump administration. They straight up banned DEI programs for every group except Jewish students. Columbia's deal requires the school to hire a Jewish student liaison whose sole job is to support Jewish students on campus while blocking any similar benefits for other students based on their protected characteristics. Meanwhile, Brown's settlement has them hosting a big party to celebrate 130 years of Jewish life at Brown, but prohibits any resource allocation with an identity-based focus for anyone else. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's textbook DEI, guys. Both universities are committing to pour resources into Jewish-exclusive facilities like ramping up security for Jewish-only Hillel and Shabbat buildings. On top of that, they'll mandate annual or ongoing anti-Semitism training for all students, staff, and faculty, conduct third-party surveys with the government to assess and improve the campus climate for Jews, expand Judaic studies, and even tweak their curricula to be more supportive of Israel. Look, you can agree or disagree with the idea of forcing America's top universities to hand out a whole array of benefits exclusively to Jewish students, along with requirements to actively recruit more Jews and encourage them to apply. But you cannot deny this is textbook DEI. And not only of all that, but arguably the worst part out of all of this is Trump's recent threat to deny disaster relief to cities that boycott Israel. I'm putting it up top. It's right here, straight from the DHS document, page 6, lays out the terms and conditions you have to follow to access that $1.9 billion in funding for disaster relief. Again, I just threw that up there so you guys can see it, straight from DHS. So in a nutshell, the government is taking our taxpayer dollars, money meant for disaster relief for us, and threatening to withhold it from Americans that choose to boycott Israel. Why is Israel even factored into disaster aid for Americans? Someone please explain that to me. Because yeah, these are serious issues that should raise major skepticism, is all I'm trying to say. But we're moving on.
The more that I think about it, the more absurd it is. Now, the Trump administration, who purports to care about free speech, that was what they ran on. Of course, they're not doing any of that stuff anymore. They're creating DEI for Israel and pushing through laws to redefine anti-Semitism. But they pretended to care about free speech. And you had J.D. Vance, who went over there to Europe and gave a whole speech, tisk tisk, to all of you European leaders that are no longer listening to what your constituents want and are instead punishing them for their speech. If the majority of your constituents think something, you can't create laws and punish them. Like, right, that was kind of the gist of his speech. Like, the markets have decided what they want, and now you're punishing these people. That's crazy, he said. America's going to be a leader. We don't believe in this. We won't support this. Then you have a literal European leader that is basically saying F you to the American Constitution, right? Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte are saying, you know what? We don't like that podcaster in America. And we are going to launch a lawsuit that's never been launched before, an unprecedented lawsuit to impoverish her for speaking. And both J.D. Vance and Trump have not issued a statement. In fact, where are the journalists even asking them to make a statement? Okay, a state leader is speaking about your constituent and launching a lawsuit and saying you're going to impoverish them for executing the First Amendment right. Where are you? If you are Trump, the first thing you should have done, if you purport to care about America and our Constitution, as you're supposed to be the person that's defending that day in and day out, you would come out and you would say, I don't even know whether I believe that she's a man or woman doesn't matter, right? I didn't watch the series. Fair. He didn't watch the series. He could even say, like he said to me on the phone, that I looked at her real close on the Eiffel Tower and it looked like a woman to me. Okay, you can say all those things, but you should say it's unacceptable. I'm a leader of this country, and it is unacceptable that this leader would threaten the First Amendment in any way. We don't need Pam Bondi rushing to issue a statement about a college male that's been shoved by a student for wearing an IDF shirt, okay? We don't need the federal government getting involved on something so meaningless. But we might need our federal government when it comes to this, okay? The job of the federal government is to defend us against foreign invaders. And I would pretty much say Emmanuel Macron right now is being a foreign invader. But no, they're silent. They are silent. And that's a pretty loud silence right now. Because like, if I remove myself out of the situation, it is crazy that Trump has been silent on this matter, especially after Emmanuel Macron flew and tried to get Trump to shut me up. He knows what Emmanuel Macron is doing and how desperate he is to do it. So why is he allowing this attack on our speech? It's crazy.
Okie dokie. So this saga underscores the tension between like our First Amendment free speech and I guess like the limits when criticizing public figures, and specifically, more particularly, how far leaders like Trump will go to protect it. While courts may uphold robust debate, the reality of this is powers often prevail. Figures like Macron can leverage legal muscle and resources to silence critics, even in America where free speech is meant to reign supreme. So, pretty gay.
Anyways, Piers Morgan, who owed me almost $150,000 US dollars after making the first bet regarding the defamation claim, is basically coming at me like triple or nothing. And he had me on his show. I think it aired yesterday evening, and we discussed the Brigitte Macron case. And here is Piers coming to me and deciding that he still thinks she's a woman and wanting to go double or nothing or triple or nothing. Take a listen.
Last time we discussed this on Uncensored, I bet you $150,000 that you were wrong and that she's a woman. On X, when we discussed this further, I doubled it. This is for charity, to $300,000. You haven't accepted that yet. So right now, $300,000 to charity. I say she's a woman. Are you prepared to take that bet?
I'm 1,000% prepared to take that bet. I actually didn't see your tweet, or I would have accepted it live. So we can totally accept that bet.
Okay,
I believe
right.
Brigitte Macron is a male, and that they will not be presenting any evidence to the contrary because they would have done it already.
Okay, Candace, I appreciate you coming on Uncensored. I think you're completely wrong, but we shall see. I think the great thing about this action is we're going to get to the bottom of this extraordinary story. Thank you very much indeed for coming back on.
I'll be back to get my money, Piers.
We shall see. I'm very confident.
What are we going to spend that money on when it comes in? Because outside of just total and complete corruption of the courts, this is a no-win situation for the Macrons. Like it would have to be just an unbelievably corrupt court that was willing to start to actually put in place an incredible precedent of penalizing Americans for speech against foreign leaders, which maybe they are actually at that moment. Because like I discussed with Alex Jones this morning, we are seeing never before, and like never before, an incursion on our speech. Alex Jones was showing clips of leaders of Facebook, Zionist leaders of Facebook. He even showed a clip, which I've never seen before, which I probably should have pulled before the show, of Sacha Baron Cohen standing up and speaking about how we need to arrest people. We have to start arresting people that are anti-Israel. And I want to be clear, guys, I would not take these things to be idle threats anymore, okay? We've got, for whatever reason, when it comes to speech, we can only have Zionists in power when it comes to social media, right? So he showed a clip of the person that's leading up the hate speech department at Facebook. We've shown you before the people that are leading up the hate speech laws over at TikTok. For whatever reason, the people that are in charge of speech always have to be Zionists. And when we hear them speak, there is always being floated this idea that we need to start arresting people, right? Even David Friedman, when he's speaking about me and Tucker, they're like dangling this of like, if it gets too crazy, we're going to have to start arresting people. And that might have seemed like such a far out idea to us, where we didn't even care if someone said that was going to be the inevitability a few years ago. But given everything that's taken place this year, we better take those charges to be deadly serious, those threats to be deadly serious. Because if these same people are putting in place these policies because we are noticing a genocide, right? And they're allowed to do this. And now they've infiltrated the Trump campaign. Essentially, it's now being run by the ADL. That means that we are inching ever closer to that reality. I'm not kidding. I am saying that we at this moment need to get radical when it comes to speech. Radical when it comes to speech, because it will just go away, you guys, in a moment's notice. And the fact that so many people are still getting up there and lying to us willfully about what is happening in Gaza. The fact, as Alex Jones showed me, that there was a clip of Mike Huckabee in this moment from like last week saying that Israel is like the most moral army in the world. Like, that's insane. That is totally insane. Outside of you being unbelievably ignorant about what's happening there, which I won't accept that. Obviously, he's the ambassador to Israel. He knows exactly what's going on there. Why are you saying that? They're going to have to crush speech. They literally are going to have to crush speech.
Yeah, so she's making some great points. In a free society, the ability to criticize anyone or anything, including the government, is vital for preserving liberty and truth. Our First Amendment fosters open debate and accountability, and our founding fathers enshrined free speech in the Constitution, having firsthand witnessed the dangers of tyrannical rule to ensure citizens could question authority without fear, preventing the concentration of unchecked power. This right empowers individuals to challenge falsehoods and expose corruption, safeguarding democracy. But, I don't even know about the democracy thing anymore. That's why, I feel like it's becoming a popular thing where people are kind of tired of the two-party system. And you can see that where Thomas Massey and Elon Musk have come together recently, and they're talking about joining this new or creating this new party, which I would caution everyone to be super skeptical of everyone that's a part of this apparatus, because it's known that when a hero is needed, they will provide them. So just got to make sure it's not another sleight of hand. But let's continue.
An incredible precedent of penalizing Americans for speech against foreign leaders, which maybe they are actually at that moment. Because like I discussed with Alex Jones this morning, we are seeing never before, and like never before, an incursion on our speech. Alex Jones was showing clips of leaders of Facebook, Zionist leaders of Facebook. He even showed a clip, which I've never seen before, which I probably should have pulled before the show, of Sacha Baron Cohen standing up and speaking about how we need to arrest people. We have to start arresting people that are anti-Israel. And I want to be clear, guys. I would not take these things to be idle threats anymore, okay? We've got, for whatever reason, when it comes to speech, we can only have Zionists in power when it comes to social media, right? So he showed a clip of the person that's leading up the hate speech department at Facebook. We've shown you before the people that are leading up the hate speech laws over at TikTok. For whatever reason, the people that are in charge of speech always have to be Zionists. And when we hear them speak, there is always being floated this idea that we need to start arresting people, right? Even David Friedman, when he's speaking about me and Tucker, they're like dangling this of like, if it gets too crazy, we're going to have to start arresting people. And that might have seemed like such a far out idea to us, where we didn't even care if someone said that was going to be the inevitability a few years ago. But given everything that's taken place this year, we better take those charges to be deadly serious, those threats to be deadly serious. Because if these same people are putting in place these policies because we are noticing a genocide, right? And they're allowed to do this. And now they've infiltrated the Trump campaign. Essentially, it's now being run by the ADL. That means that we are inching ever closer to that reality. I'm not kidding. I am saying that we at this moment need to get radical when it comes to speech. Radical when it comes to speech, because it will just go away, you guys, in a moment's notice. And the fact that so many people are still getting up there and lying to us willfully about what is happening in Gaza. The fact, as Alex Jones showed me, that there was a clip of Mike Huckabee in this moment from like last week saying that Israel is like the most moral army in the world. Like, that's insane. That is totally insane. outside of you being unbelievably ignorant about what's happening there, which I won't accept that. Obviously, he's the ambassador to Israel. He knows exactly what's going on there. Why are you saying that? They're going to have to crush speech.
I've been following the Israel-Palestine conflict in Gaza fairly close, not obsessively, enough to see that it looks pretty unfair. From what I do know, I doubt everything we have been told about October 7th to now is the whole truth. And let's not forget, all the sources feeding us that information come straight from Israel, and they're the dominant force in the region, obviously. So, how much can you really trust it? Of course, there's going to be a bias there. And on top of that, the Palestinians don't even have a real army, no navy, no air force, nothing like that. And now, women, children, everyone in that area, they're being starved to death. Literally, people are dying from starvation, including children. It's heartbreaking. And once you really dig into it, if you're someone with any moral compass, it's just impossible to see the injustice that's going on there. And beyond that, when it comes to the free speech and the call to be radical about it, I think Candace makes a good point, because if we allow our free speech to be taken away, we're cooked. It's over with. Finito. Finished. I'm attempting to do my part here, making this channel, making these videos, calling out the hypocrisy I see all around us, and just trying to do something, anything, to help preserve the ideals our country was founded upon. At the very least, the Bill of Rights, the original 10 amendments that formed the heart of our Constitution, are what matter the most, and we have to be willing to fight for them. All of this stuff matters, of course. It all does. It's all important, and we need to take it seriously, or it'll get snatched away, washed right out from under us faster than we ever could imagine.
Truth, again, doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if they want you to tell the truth. That's what the picture looks like in Europe, and I am telling you right now, we are seeing that first incursion in the United States where they're trying to affect the same thing. Anyways, let me get into some of your comments. I'm going on a rant because I'm pretty passionate about this. BC writes, Candace, I have a question about your Trump phone call. What was Emmanuel Macron supposedly doing to end the war? The only people who can end it are either Trump by stopping the weapons, Putin by withdrawing, or Zelensky by agreeing to give up Donbas. Emmanuel Macron seems irrelevant.
Okay. So she's reading a comment from someone asking why she's focused on Brigitte Macron when there are wars raging, and the commenter mentions that Putin and Trump have the power to stop them. I've heard this criticism before, people claiming Candace is part of the establishment because she's zeroing in on this Brigitte Macron story, which they see as insignificant compared to everything else. I understand that perspective to a degree, but I can truly see both sides. That said, she does have a massive platform and reaches a ton of people. If what she's saying about Brigitte Macron is true, that Brigitte Macron was born a man but has been pretending to be a woman, and that she began a predatory relationship with her husband when he was just a young boy, then it really highlights how twisted and backwards the power structures are in our world. And I think that's pretty important. We might well be being led by total degenerates, and that's something a lot of people need to realize. So I don't want to give her too much grief over it. There are certainly bigger problems out there, but if this story gets to everyday people like soccer moms and those busy with daily life engaged, if it gets them engaged, thinking critically and questioning things, then I'm all for it.
What Trump said to me was that he needed Emmanuel Macron's signature on something. So my obviously it would be the EU. Emmanuel Macron's signature would be needed if you were doing some deal with the EU. It would require cooperation from Macron, and he made that very clear that he needed Macron's cooperation, and that Macron had thus far been cooperative with his administration. So obviously Trump didn't relay to me the intricacies of what that was, but that was my understanding from the phone call. Sarah D writes, listening to you on Piers, and I wanted to let you know that even if you are wrong about Brigitte, which you are not, your fans will still continue to love and support you. Your career will not end for this. Yeah, I am not at all... I never at all thought that because I took such a risk here, and I would have never taken that risk unless I felt that the evidence was overwhelming. I mean, such a crazy, like I said, I was on the side of rationality, just going, oh my God, this is so crazy. Of course it can't be true. And then when I looked at the evidence, it's so overwhelming that it's ridiculous that other journalists would not be jumping on this and telling the story. It's so crazy, the gaslighting that's taking place, this Freud level gaslighting that is taking place across the world regarding Brigitte Macron. It's just, it's nutty, to be frank. And maybe that's the wrong word to use. Every time you use a word about this, it never seems to be the right fit. Piers said yesterday, "You've got balls," and said maybe that wasn't the right terminology to use. But it does frankly seem nutty to me that it's the biggest story in the world, actually, and nobody wants to touch it. And there's a reason for that, because the mainstream media journalists recognize that the perverts are in control and you can't mess with those people. That's my viewpoint. Anyways, Angela A. writes, Candace, if the U.S. election were to happen again, who would you vote for? I wouldn't, if you're telling me it's between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, I would still vote for Trump, right? Because I don't think whether it was Kamala or Trump, it was going to make a difference on the Israel note. I think both sides of the aisle have demonstrated that they're pretty committed to Israel. So that wouldn't have changed anything. And at least on like topics of trade and other areas, I do think Trump does put America first. It's impossible to put America first if you put Israel first. So yeah, I would still vote for Trump. Lover of light writes, I don't want to know a world without Candace. Please be so careful, Candace. We love you dearly. That's really sweet. I appreciate you guys. And I do this because of you guys, because of your support. And first and foremost, because of my children. Like I said, if we're going to be cowards, this is going to be the world that our children are going to inherit. And they've turned us all into cowards by distracting us where we're so comfortable. It's so easy to be a coward when you're so comfortable. You don't even know what a day of hard work is. People complain if they have to work 8 hours, 5 days a week. Right? We're like, oh gosh, the weekend's not long enough. Meanwhile, like you go back 1-2 generations and like your grandparents were working with their hands. Like my granddad was a sharecropper, 5 years old, working out in the fields, laying tobacco out to dry in North Carolina. And then I find myself being like, oh, it was such a long day today. I had to do a press hit and a podcast. We're ridiculous. They wanted us to be ushered into this idea of comfort because they know that breeds cowardice. Like it just breeds complacency and cowardice. Ziana writes, Skylar being my podcaster. Don't worry, Ziana, I'm still going to get to you. But Skylar has put something in yellow, which means that it needs my attention. And he writes from the control room, Trump just called Epstein's situation a hoax and bullshit while taking questions in the Oval Office. Okay, Skylar, run the clip.
Mr. President, is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw a report today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit. Okay.
Hey guys, I want to apologize. I did not watch the entire podcast before starting my review and gathering information. Earlier in this video, I played the same clip Candace just played. I've been watching and creating the review as I go, so I'm nearly done with this video, so I'm just going to leave it as is so I can move on to the next project. Again, I apologize for that, and I appreciate you guys understanding.
Okay.
I just want to know which part specifically is total bullshit. Like which part specifically? Is he saying that like Trump, that he wasn't blackmailing people and that former Mossad agent Ari Ben-Banash was lying about that? Is he saying that like, that it's bullshit to suggest that he was working for the Mossad at all? Is he saying that it's bullshit to suggest that he was found guilty and got a sweetheart deal for some unknown reason? Is it bullshit to suggest that your own Secretary of Labor under your first term, Alexander Acosta, said that he was told to leave Jeffrey Epstein alone because someone from a higher pay grade told him, even though he was the presiding judge, to just look the other way and allow him to sign the sweetheart deal despite the fact that he had molested children? Is that all BS? Like, is Alexander Acosta lying? Your own labor secretary, was he lying then? Everybody's lying. What part specifically is bullshit? That'd be my question. I think that's a fair question to ask, right? Ziana K writes, I think the Greater Israel campaign includes America. It's Make America Great Again, right? The elites seem really bored and their entertainment comes at a cost for us. That's interesting. So the idea that Israel is not just expanding its borders literally into Syria, which they've done, It's everything they're doing right now. I said this on the Alex Jones show earlier. I'm like, even if we're just talking about Gaza, they're involved everywhere. Their fingers are everywhere where Christians are dying. It's so funny when they're like, you don't want to talk about Syria. It's like, no, we've already spoken about what's happening in Syria. I said, if Assad goes down, Christians are going to die. And the neocons laughed at that assertion. They applauded when Assad went down. And they applauded it because they are Operation Mockingbird for Netanyahu's aims to expand Israel's borders. And in order to execute the fall of Assad, Israel, factually, you can look this up in the Israeli media, funded al-Nusrat, Al-Qaeda adjacent. They funded the Islamic terrorists. I gotta tell you one thing. To be an Islamic terrorist, you sure as hell have to be a Zionist. just like every time we get radical Islam, they seem to be helping Israel. Even when the towers went down, right? Oh, radical Islam. Then you got Bibi Netanyahu being like, this was good. This was good for Israel. It just happens to be radical Islam is so good for Israel. And despite their proximity to Israel, like for whatever reason, they're not they're going after like Christians. And let's not forget that Israel is funding the weapons for Azerbaijan to murder Armenians, right? Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. They're like, we give Israel money, and then Israel is giving arms to Azerbaijan to go after Armenian Christians. Yep, they're in that territory, so nobody cares. And they're like, oh, what about the Congo? Christians are dying in the Congo. Have you heard of Dan Gertler? Anybody? Do you want to look up Dan Gertler for us? George, just like, it's amazing. What is Israel like the number one? Are they at the epicenter for like the diamond trade, which is amazing because like diamonds, last I checked, you don't mind diamonds in Israel. How did they do that? How did they do that? Can you look up Dan Gertler? That's a nice person to look up. I mean, and then don't even forget they unmasked some guy that was down in the Congo. I should have had this story ready, but can you pull him up, Skylar? Yeah, Dan Gertler. But there was this guy who was pretending, and it was down in Congo, and I'll have this for you tomorrow and get specific about it. But there was a guy who was masked and murdering people, and they caught him and they unmasked him, and he actually was Israeli. And I guess we were supposed to believe, I don't know, that he was like a radical Islamic guy, but he actually was Israeli. Do you have Dan Gertler ready? Yeah. Here we go. Billionaire under sanctions could get $300 million in controversial U.S. Congo deal. If you're interested in what's going on in Congo, I would probably start with Dan Gertler. Yeah, that would be a good. But again, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. For some reason, like when you look into these situations, they're telling you that like noticing that is wrong and it's anti-Semitic, that Israel always somehow is involved in these random places. But why isn't it somebody else? Why aren't we like unmasking a guy? Why isn't it as opposed to Dan Gertler that's involved there? Why isn't it like just like some random person from, I don't know, Canada? For some reason, it's always Israel. It's always Israel. And it is so foolish for us not to admit that. And we better admit that and say it before they start arresting us for our speech, crushing us for our speech, impoverishing us for our speech, which is their aim with me at this moment. Ziana K, I've already got to your comment. BM writes, Candace, have you considered the possibility of evidence being faked to win the case? It would not be surprising. How do you plan to combat this? Look, all I can do is pray, right? We can't combat corruption of the courts. We understand that. Everything we cover on this show, we've been speaking about the corruption of the courts. Even when you're somebody who gives your entire life, as Harvey Weinstein did to the ADL, you can get taken out in a moment's notice. I'm still interested in who Harvey Weinstein pissed off, because it was definitely somebody. He was the kind of guy who went there with powerful people. He was the kind of guy, somebody told me a story. I sat down with Harvey Weinstein, and Harvey Weinstein ate off of their plate. Could you imagine to sit down with this guy and he's being so obnoxious and he wants you to know that it's a power move. So he takes you to a restaurant, you're talking, and he just eats off of your plate. That's a power move, right? So I'm imagining, like, if Harvey Weinstein, look at that case, you're like, what happened here? The courts can just do whatever they want. It's true. Of course, I understand that. And I'm not someone who gives tons of money to the ADL. In fact, I'm somebody that's on the ADL's list, and I'm talking about the stuff that the ADL has covered up, the stuff that they've lied about, their origin story, which is a story about gangsters in America that wanted to pretend that they were establishing the Anti-Defamation League because their theory is you accuse other guys of exactly what you're doing. They defame people. So they call themselves the Anti-Defamation League. And that story is crazy that they defended Leo Frank, who murdered a Catholic girl, a young Catholic girl. It's so crazy that that's how they started their entire organization. And they are still trying to sanitize Leo Frank and pretending that it was an issue where it was just, anti-Semitism. He's a very powerful guy, Leo Frank. Anti-Semitism is not what happened. He murdered someone. And that person's name is Mary Fagan. He married young. He killed young Mary Fagan, and he was a creep, and he was gross.
Okay. I'm not too sure how many people are familiar with Leo Frank and the story of Mary Fagan, so I'll fill you guys in real quick. But basically, he physically violated her and then ultimately murdered her. But the story goes that the ADL, which is just another Jewish lobby, very similar to AIPAC, but in my personal opinion, it's far more aggressive. But again, the story goes that it was founded in 1913 to defend and free Leo Frank, a Jewish factory superintendent who did what I just said to a 13-year-old Mary Fagan in Atlanta, Georgia. The courts and the community obviously portrayed his conviction as justified, while the ADL's efforts to exonerate him were seen as a Jewish plot to protect a guilty pedophile. The ADL to this day says that anti-Semitism was the real reason Leo Frank was convicted of Mary Fagan's murder. An interesting fact, the only time his Jewish ancestry was ever mentioned in the press or courtroom was when Leo Frank's mother called the solicitor a Gentile dog. And if you don't know what a Gentile is, it's a Jewish word for non-Jew or cattle.
So, yeah, I say these things to tell the truth, and I obviously have become a target, but the only way you can combat it is through prayer. And I also think publicity, like me showing everybody in the world what is happening. The whole world is gratefully paying attention to this case. And so I'm going to discuss every element of it. I am not scared about the plausibility of me being deposed. I'm not afraid about discovery because there's nothing to hide. I mean, discovery will show that I got into this case, not even because of Xavier Broussard, but because I was reading an article one night. They could bring in PBD, Patrick Bet-David, Vincent Oshana, the night at the UFC, the night that I first fell into the story because of the Daily Mail. And it would just show that I got into this entirely organically. I am not funded by anyone. And I'm passionate about this case because it's just a scary idea that an entire state can collude with the media to hide something this big, right? It's totally demented, and somebody has to have the courage to bring these cases to the forefront. Anyways, you guys, last up, we have Lamp007. They write, Candace, you are right to fear people that are trying to add tech to your body. The best way to get people to accept the mark of the beast is by obscuring it as binary or as a code, and then you make it easy to use for purchases. Yeah, no chance. I am so off the AI train. I am so off of like technology going into your body. I don't even buy the Elon Musk story. Like I said, I believe in the Midas touch thing. They have these people, they're all state actors. They work for the military one way or the other. And they pretend these people are like geniuses. And they founded this tech company in their garage. They're always in their garage, right? I was just in my garage fluffing around and boop, Google. I was just fluffing around in my garage and YouTube. And then you look into these people's families and they've had power forever. Again, Elizabeth Theranos. Oh, yeah, I was just fluffing around and I don't know. I got into this. I dropped out of Stanford. And yeah, I just was a genius, but also have one of the wealthiest families ever. It's like it's the world is a stage and these people are actors and they're handed stuff. Here's this tech and we're actually using it because we want more control over the population, but we need to make people believe that democracy is real and that the free market is real and that they are able to do the same thing and climb to the top when in reality we have all the power. That's my perception. Would love to hear what your guys' ideas are on that.
All righty, guys. Thank you all for joining. I want to wrap up with a few closing thoughts. Candace raised some excellent points, and I believe it's crucial that we take these discussions seriously. We must do our own due diligence and stay informed about what's happening in the world. There are many issues that should spark curiosity and prompt us to think critically about who's leading us, what's really going on, and whether we're building a prosperous, strong, and trustworthy system of government and society for our children. It all starts with awareness, honest conversation with friends and family, and staying engaged. If you found this discussion valuable, please like, comment, and subscribe. Stay blessed, and thank you for listening.